In today's world, almost everyone is taking selfies on a regular basis. It doesn't matter if you look exactly the same as you did yesterday, people feel obligated to document every single thing and then post it online. It's a quite curious thing. In fact, we'd ask that if you don't take selfies, do you even really exist? But seriously, this age of the smartphone has brought on a whole new generation of people who no longer live in the moment. When you're glued to your phone, you lose awareness of your surroundings. Blend it together with a good dose of vanity and you've got a recipe for disaster. Selfies are now more deadly than shark attacks, with dozens of deadly cases happening every single year. And in the video today, some of them. Number 10. Smarter than the average bear. In May 2018, a man named Prabhu Bhattara was returning home from a wedding in Kotpad, India with a group of friends. He asked if they could pull the car over so that he could relieve himself on the side of the road. This is when he spotted what appeared to be a wounded bear lying on the ground. Instead of calling wildlife services, he decided that he wanted to crouch down next to it to get a selfie with the bear. But he underestimated the extent of the animal's injuries because it immediately began to maul him. Out of nowhere, the man's only hope appeared. A stray dog came barking and tried to help fend off the bear, proving that dogs truly are better than most humans. Forest officials were located 10 kilometers away, so it took a while for them to show up and shoot the bear with tranquilizers. By then, though, well, it was already too late. Number 9. The Facebook status. They say you should never text and drive, and the same can be said about trying to take a selfie and drive. In 2014, a 32-year-old woman named Courtney Sanford was cruising along US Highway I-85 in North Carolina when she pulled out her cell phone so that she could post a video to Facebook of herself lip-syncing to the song Happy by Pharrell Williams. She also managed to type the words "The Happy Song Makes Me So Happy" just moments before she began to drift into oncoming traffic. Sanford crashed into an oncoming recycling truck and her car burst into flames. The rest of the cars behind the truck managed to stop in time before there was a major pileup. Thankfully, the truck driver was not harmed in the crash, and Sanford was the only casualty. The police examined her social media accounts and realized that she had a habit of frequently taking selfies while driving, so, well, this was far from her first time. The officer on the crash, Lieutenant Chris Weisner, summarized it perfectly by saying, "In a matter of seconds, her life was over just so she could notify some friends that she was happy. It's really not worth it." Number 8. Thug life. Some people will go to great lengths to make themselves look tough in their Instagram selfies. In fact, there are several stories of Americans accidentally shooting themselves while trying to get the perfect selfie in the hopes of getting some street cred. Sadly, many of them are teenage boys, but sometimes even experienced adults make the same mistake. In 2006, a man in Washington state was having a photo shoot with his girlfriend when they were both taking selfies together with their gun collection. Each time the man held up a new gun for the photo, he unloaded the bullets beforehand. He would point the gun at himself and pretend to pull the trigger because he thought it made him look tough. But there were so many firearms in his collection that he forgot to take at least one bullet out and ended up fatally shooting himself in what turned out to be an unintentional game of Russian roulette. Number 7. Mayday. In case you weren't aware, there is a trend on the internet called a shoe selfie, which is when the photographer gets a shot of their feet dangling over the edge of something high. Usually these are taken on a bridge, on the top of a building, off a cliff, or, in the case of this example, out of a helicopter. In March of 2018, a group of 5 friends were on a sightseeing helicopter flying over New York City. The door was open, so one of the passengers decided to sit on the edge, dangling their feet while taking a selfie. Unfortunately, they weren't paying attention to their surroundings, and the passenger's harness accidentally pulled a switch called emergency fuel shutoff lever. In many ways, this sort of sounds like that movie trope of the big red button that says "do not push." Either way, the pilot shouted at the passengers to get back into their seats. He had just enough time to guide the helicopter so that it crashed into the East River instead of a building. Unfortunately, though, the passengers were all strapped to their harnesses. The pilot managed to escape, but all of the passengers died. Number 6. Incoming. If you saw a herd of elephants running towards you at full speed, what would your first reaction be? We'd probably guess that it would be to get out of the way really quickly. But for one drunk Indian man named Ashok Bhatti, he saw a herd of elephants barreling towards him at full speed and thought, wow, this would make an epic selfie. You could probably guess what happened next. Bhatti was trampled by the herd of elephants. Witnesses nearby tried to take him to the hospital, but he had already died of his injuries. Believe it or not, there have been several elephant stampede-related selfie deaths around the world, and their stories are almost always the same. So the moral of the story here is to remember that wildlife is not going to stop to say cheese just because you pulled out a camera. Number 5. 1, 2, 3, jump. In researching this video, we found stories of hundreds of people who have fallen to their deaths while trying to take a selfie. This one's a little bit different. In 2017, a 23-year-old South Korean woman was living in the UK because she decided to study English abroad. She was visiting the Seven Sisters Cliff, which is located in East Sussex. The woman asked some of the other visitors nearby if they would take her cell phone so that she could do a jumping selfie near the edge of the cliff. In case you weren't aware, this is when people jump high into the air and someone takes their photo in midair so it looks like they're flying. The strangers agreed to photograph her, but it would seem that she underestimated the space that she needed to perform the jump. Instead of landing on solid ground, she accidentally jumped off the cliff. Yet another person died in Machu Picchu while trying to take a jumping selfie. So please everyone, just don't take a selfie near a cliff, and if you do, at least keep your feet firmly on the ground, alright? Number 4. All aboard. Plenty of people have taken selfies on trains, but one man in India wanted to be different. A group of young men were traveling by train when one of them, named Taraknath Makal, decided to leave the train car and hang out of the door with one arm in order to take a high-speed selfie. However, he slipped and he fell onto the tracks below. 4 of his friends jumped off the train in an attempt to save him. The only problem was that all 4 of the men had now thrown themselves off a train and were now most likely injured and on another train track altogether, just as a second train was coming towards them at high speeds. All 4 of these men were mown down by the train, and Makal, the man who took the selfie in the first place, actually managed to roll off the track on his own before being killed. So this young man now has to live with the guilt of knowing that his selfie was responsible for the death of his friends. Number 3. Dios Mio. In 2017, 2 young 17 and 18-year-old women in Chihuahua, Mexico were visiting a horse race track. The track was directly next to an airfield where small planes were regularly landing and taking off. The girls thought it would look really cool to capture the image of a low-flying airplane in the background of their selfie. So the girls jumped in a truck and left the race, driving over to the airfield. They got outside to stand on top of the flatbed of the pickup truck so that the field was in clear view of their photograph. They began taking pictures together, getting ready for the next plane to land. But they clearly underestimated just how close they were to the landing strip because as an airplane was trying to descend, the wing of the aircraft knocked both of them in the head, killing them instantly. Police investigated the scene, but after examining the cell phone's photo gallery, it was clear what had happened. Number 2. If I fall, don't bring me back. In recent years, Croatia has become a hot tourist destination because foreigners are coming from far and wide to see the ancient city where they filmed King's Landing in Game of Thrones. So it really should not be surprising that tourists are going to pull off dangerous selfie stunts while they're on holiday. In 2016, a 20-year-old Canadian man was visiting a national park in the country. He decided to try cliff diving because he wanted to take a selfie while doing it. Unfortunately for him, though, this cliff was 75 feet high, and this was not normally an area where anyone went cliff diving. He would have died if it were not for several tree branches that caught him as he fell. After this incident, the government of Croatia put out a public statement to new tourists coming to the country that said, "Stop taking stupid and dangerous selfies." Number 1. Kaboom. In 2015, 2 young men were visiting the Ural Mountains of Russia carrying a live grenade. Similar to many of the gun selfies out there, the men thought that they would look totally badass if they posed next to the grenade with the pin pulled out. Most likely, they were hoping to quickly take the photo before throwing the grenade as far as they could down the mountain. Obviously, they didn't seem to care if this started an avalanche or a fire so long as they got the perfect shot. But they grossly underestimated how quickly a grenade would blow up, and it exploded soon after the snapped photo. The police recovered the photographs on the cell phone, so they were able to clearly see what had happened. After this incident, Russia had to put out a public service announcement about selfie safety. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. If you're looking for more daily videos from me, why not check out my other channel called Today I Found Out? You will find that linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching.